Welcome, you're watching Vox News, your daily evening news with Rita Kamkumo. Our headlines today: Lesotho's former Minister of Finance, Mokwetsi Majoro, officially takes office following Tom Tabani's resignation. More than 20 years after the 1998 attacks in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam, the victims will finally be compensated. Southern Africa leaders join forces to help Mozambique face the jihadist insurrection in the far north of its territory. Our top story today: Lesotho's former Minister of Finance, Mokwetsi Majoro, officially took office this Wednesday as Prime Minister at a swearing-in ceremony in the kingdom's capital, Maseru. Mr. Majoro, a member of the same party as his predecessor Tom Tabani, served with the International Monetary Fund from 2008 to 2012 before joining the government, where he occupied several ministerial functions. The new Prime Minister's inauguration follows Thomas Tabani's resignation on Tuesday after a prolonged political crisis triggered by his alleged implication in the assassination of his ex-wife in 2017.
My fellow countrymen and women, I appear before you today to announce that the work that you had assigned me may not yet be over, but the time to retire from the great theatre of action and take leave from public life and office has finally arrived.
The former Prime Minister took his final bow before the people of Lesotho and wished his successor good luck during his farewell speech.
I plead with the entire nation and leadership to give my successor our utmost support. On my part, I wish to assure him of my full support at all material times as he strives to achieve the above lofty goals of fostering development, protecting the vulnerable, and being a voice of the voiceless. It has been my greatest honor to serve in that capacity. I therefore to thank all Basotho from the bottom of my heart for the trust they bestowed on me. Where I've erred, I sincerely seek your indulgence and to forgive me, as I did not do so intentionally. Allow me also to take this opportunity to thank my wife and my entire family for their unwavering support to me as Prime Minister. Through it all, they have been a pillar of strength to me. Their words of love and encouragement, coupled with deeds of support to me, have not gone unnoticed. Without a doubt, I know that they share my pain, grief, and joy.
Thomas Tabani's resignation sparked many reactions among Lesotho's citizens.
Well, I think the way that Dr. Thomas Tabani stepped down, I think it's quite unfortunate. I think he's someone that was revered in the political arena of Lesotho for the longest of times. I think he fell into the trap of most of our leaders that are there for a bit too long. I think he got older, he got more susceptible to influence, and I think that may have dented his image. But yeah, I think he served the country, but I think he served it maybe a bit too long.
Residents also commented on the choice of their new Prime Minister, Mokwetsi Majoro.
As a country, we have lowered the premiership, we have lowered the bar, and Majoro definitely is above that bar that we have lowered as Basotho. So anybody can become a Prime Minister in Lesotho. So Majoro is far above that bar. So as a character, for us, he fits the bar, he fits the job, and then he can do better, supported by state institutions that are very weak. With the current reforms coming in, he would be a perfect Prime Minister, supported by...
One would love to think positively. One would think that Dr. Majoro, being an economist, having a global reputation, would want to preserve that and really just try and lead the country, try to create some kind of unity. But you realize that politics don't work that way, particularly our kind of pedestrian African politics, where even him being there means there's one or two favors owed, and it's about how that unfolds. Like DC coming out of being the opposition and now being a main player in another coalition. The scores to settle, there's, it's not just going to be as easy as we'd like it to think.
The new Prime Minister promised to be a sincere and faithful Prime Minister in his duties in all circumstances before his predecessor and parliamentarians. In Burundi, the first round of voting in the presidential election scheduled for this Wednesday became a reality as polling stations opened their doors shortly after 6 a.m. local time to welcome voters despite the coronavirus pandemic. The election will mark the end of outgoing President Pierre Nkurunziza's rule since 2005, as he is not standing for re-election. The presidential election opposes, among the 7 candidates in the running, the ruling party, the National Council for the Defense of Democracy, and its candidate, Evariste Ndayishimiye, to Agathon Rwasa, leader of the opposition party, the National Congress for Liberty. In addition to the new president, Burundian voters are called to the polls until 4 p.m. local time to choose their deputies and community councillors, who will then appoint members of the Senate. More than 20 years after the Al-Qaeda's 1998 attacks on U.S. embassies in Nairobi, Kenya and Tanzania's former capital city Dar es Salaam that killed 224 people and wounded 5,000, victims of this tragedy, mainly Africans, will finally obtain compensation. The Supreme Court of the United States ruled earlier this week that they are eligible for punitive damages from Sudan, which was found to have assisted the terrorist organization at the time by hosting members of the Islamist movement, as well as Osama bin Laden. Compensating the victims is a way for Sudan to get off the list of countries sponsoring terrorism, according to the United States, a label that prevents Khartoum from benefiting from part of the international financial system, which worsens its already delicate economic situation. While the whole world is facing the coronavirus pandemic, the World Health Organization is under heavy fire from the United States for its management of the health crisis. The Director General of the United Nations Agency, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, has been heavily accused by the American government of providing coverage to the Chinese authorities by underestimating the extent of the disease. As a result, Mr. Ghebreyesus was forced on Tuesday to conduct a detailed independent investigation into the management of the COVID-19 pandemic by his institution. This investigation, requested by President Donald Trump, received the green light from the General Assembly of the institution and will prevent the organization from losing American funding, which amounts to $400 million per year. In Mali, President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta pardoned 400 detainees on Tuesday to decongest prisons during the coronavirus pandemic, among which is the Islamic preacher Bandjougou Doumbia, recently condemned for polemical comments, according to the presidency. Mr. Doumbia, accused of publicly praising several jihadist leaders, was arrested in February and sentenced to 2 years in prison in early March. No further details were provided on the profile of the other inmates benefiting from the presidential pardon. All prisoners were expected to be released in January 2021, except for Bandjougou Doumbia. With a population of 19 million inhabitants, Mali has officially recorded 901 cases of coronavirus contamination, including 529 recoveries and 53 deaths. In Cameroon, President Paul Biya made his first televised speech on Tuesday evening since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic in the country, breaking a media silence of more than 2 months, which was highly criticized by the opposition. President Biya asked Cameroonians to comply with government measures, such as mandatory mask wearing, to remain calm and to ignore false information relayed on social media, alluding to rumors about his death. The head of state's long-awaited speech came the day before the celebration of Cameroon's national holiday. The 87-year-old president had not addressed the nation since the announcement on the 5th of March of the first case of coronavirus, even though Cameroon is one of the most affected countries in sub-Saharan Africa by the pandemic, with 3,529 positive cases of contamination officially registered for a population of 25.2 million inhabitants. On the security front, the Zimbabwean government held on Tuesday an extraordinary summit of the Southern African Development Community in Harare. The terrorism threat in Southern Africa, and more particularly the jihadist insurrection in the far north of Mozambique, were the primary concerns.
The threat of terrorism has in the past decade assumed greater proportions. SADC region is equally affected by this growing risk of violent religious extremism, radicalization, and terrorism.
The terrorism you can't fight alone everywhere. This is the experience what we have. We needed to share the forces, not only in region, for Africa, for all way.
Southern Africa leaders are determined to join forces to eradicate terrorism prevailing in their region, especially in Mozambique, where an Islamist shadow group known as Al-Shabaab has been perpetrating attacks on isolated villages for more than 2 years, forcing thousands of locals to flee their homes. On the economic front, the Ivorian Ministry of Oil announced on Tuesday that the state company Qatar Petroleum had acquired 45% shares in 2 oil blocks in Ivory Coast, on which the French group Total operates. Ivory Coast, which produces 40,000 barrels a day, revised its oil code in 2015 to attract new investors through production sharing contracts. Finally, in Kenya, scientists, engineers and innovators are actively looking for homegrown solutions to combat the new coronavirus in their country.
This globalization means that we can have solutions being made at source, especially right now with the lockdown. Nothing is moving anywhere, and it was very exciting to see that actually they can make it with the resources there.
Some engineering students, in collaboration with the medical department at the Kenyatta University, who developed a ventilator, are convinced that solutions to the pandemic are at hand.
It shows that everything we need might be with us. Sometimes we look without, but it is actually within.
Meanwhile, employees of a 3D printing company are producing around 500 face shields a day.
Normally, all the competitors that would be fighting against each other are all coming together, like our 3D printing network. We've actually, all collaborated, all sharing one design, all on one costing method, and everyone's producing the same thing. Common goal is quite powerful, yeah.
Another area of innovation has been the development of a system to help trace contact in local transport by a tech hub in Kisumu.
What if we build something that can help people to register themselves and keep track of them, so that shall there be a case of one person turns reactive or confirmed to be having corona, then the group of people he has ever met throughout can be traced as quickly as possible.
This one is good. For let's say we are in a vehicle, each and every one of us doesn't know each other. So in case this number is given to all of the passengers in the vehicle, it will be easier even for the government to capture those people who are in that vehicle.
With a population of 51.3 million inhabitants, Kenya has officially reported 963 cases of virus contamination, including 358 recoveries and 50 deaths. That's it for today. Thank you for watching Vox News.